Subject Learning and Assessment Review 2019. This SLAR was conducted in line with new junior cycle assessment and reporting framework. The review took place in Limerick School of Art and Design in January of 2019. I teamed up with two other students from the PME in Art and Design Education to conduct this review of work. The body of work which I presented to my peers related to a dry point etching scheme of work completed with students in Ardscoil Reach, Limerick. For the purposes of this video, I will summarise the success criteria associated with this scheme. The assessment criteria document is available for further analysis on my website. The key success criteria are as follows. 1. Hatching and cross-hatching, evidence of which should be visible in all development drawings and in the production of the final plate. This supports the creation of a 3D drawing of Shelburne House. 2. Quality of line, the ability to create a variety of different line widths and depths when undertaking the etching process. 3. Composition. Consideration of composition should be evident in the photograph taken by the students during the on-site visit and also in subsequent drawings. I will now provide a brief overview of each example of students' work and touch on the areas of discussion that helped evaluate my decision making. Firstly, looking at the piece of students' work that is in the yet to meet expectations descriptor. Two of the key reasons for this student's work being placed in this category were the lack of supporting documentation submitted by the student and the incomplete plate or print. We reviewed the success criteria and agreed that this student had only engaged to a small extent in the hatching process, evident in the upper left-hand corner of the final print. One of my peers did note the composition of the final print and plate itself were quite strong. However, confirmed my view that without proper documentation, such as the photograph and initial drawing, we could not justify awarding a higher descriptor. A document published by the NCCA titled Guidelines for Classroom-Based Assessments clearly states in the Evidence of Learning section that it is only evidence of learning that has been submitted by the student for assessment that will be judged against the relevant features of quality. Now moving on to the example of student work which falls within the in line with expectations descriptor. I explained to my peers that while the finished print did meet the majority of my success criteria in terms of quality of line and engagement with the hatching process, the composition of the image on the plate was not as well considered as some of the other elements presented in the block. Key pieces of work that would have helped the student properly consider composition and helped us understand the creative process undertaken were not available for us to view. One question from a peer during the review related to the descriptor awarded for the realised work category. I presented the group with a breakdown of the descriptors awarded to each category, and it was agreed by all that the unbalanced judgment made was appropriate given the lack of supporting work, particularly in terms of research and initial ideas. During a visual arts cluster day in January 2018, there was a clear emphasis on the visual sketchbook being used to capture ideas, creativity, experiments and explorations. Similarly, when we look at the specification document for visual art, the visual art sketchbook is described as the student's own personal record of the creative journey. When all work completed is not presented in the student's visual art sketchpad, it presents an incomplete journey, as seen with this example of students' work. Looking now at the example of students' work that was placed in the above expectations category, I had a number of questions in regard to the final descriptor awarded, and for this reason was keen to hear from my peers. The composition of the image along with the student's quality of line and hatching surpassed all expectations set, and the development of creative ability evident in the sketchbook would suggest the highest possible descriptor. One key development sketch, however, was not completed by this student and brought into question the initial thoughts of my peers to move this student into the exceptional category. One of my peers did comment on how the student had creatively wiped the block to add depth to the image. We had thought that this observation might have warranted moving this student into the exceptional category. However, on evaluating the success criteria set, there was no support for this decision. The high quality of work produced by this student within the time frame would suggest that an adapted success criteria may have been needed. A quote from the educational psychologist Howard Gardner probably sums this up best. The biggest mistake in teaching is to treat all children as if they were variants of the same individual, and thus to feel justified in teaching them all the same subjects in the same way. Looking now to the example of student work in the exceptional category. This example was discussed to a lesser extent than the other examples on display. One of the main reasons for this was that the student had clearly documented the creative process and included all support material. The only issue that I raised with my peers was the lack of cross-hatching evident in the final print. One of my peers did comment on the direction of lines on the final print and agreed that the inclusion of cross-hatching would have made for a more realistic outcome. In this regard, we spoke of the weighting awarded to the sketchbook versus the final print. I confirmed that there was a 50-50 split here, and for this reason my peers suggested that the exceptional example remained in this category, as all support work was completed to an exceptional standard. The 50-50 divide which I have mentioned puts a strong emphasis on the process and development of work. The rationale for a new visual arts curriculum places process as one of the key elements of any scheme of work. A quote taken directly from the visual arts rationale states, "Visual art provides the learner with a space within which is safe to experiment, to fail, and to learn." The opportunity given to us in the new visual art curriculum enables us to nurture creativity in young people. To conclude, the SLAR undertaking offered me the opportunity to discuss the awarding of descriptors with my peers. The discussion which took place around each piece of work confirmed my decisions in terms of the unbalanced judgments. One of the main pieces of feedback to be communicated to students following this SLAR is the importance of documenting every stage of the creative process in their sketchbook and sticking in loose pages. The SLAR did raise questions about adapting success criteria for advanced students, and this is something that I will strongly consider moving forward. Overall, the subject learning and review experience was an extremely positive one, and the outside perspective on student work will enrich my teaching and student learning as a result.